Okay, Boker Tov. Today's daf is Kuf Yotet 119 and the last daf of Bava Kamma. Let's get going. We pick up with bottom of Kuf Yotet on the bet, the two dots. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Baisos Lokimen Mibar saying Lokimen. This is about purchasing things from shepherds. You have to be concerned that they are stolen. So can you buy sheep? Can you buy milk? Can you buy wool? And Rabbi Yehuda says if their house. So one explanation is if you buy a lot of sheep at a time, then you're allowed to do it because the owner will notice that there's gone. One or two, it's a problem because they might be stealing it from the owner and they'll get away with it. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda says if they're home animals, I guess kept close to town, then you can buy because the owner will immediately realize it. But if they're animals that are just raised out in the wilderness, Barrier saying, look, you can't buy, the owner won't know they're gone. Ibayu, there is the question. Is he going on the first part that you're allowed to buy like five animals, and he's being strict? You need two criteria, both to be a lot of animals and they be home animals. Or is he going on the end? You're not allowed to buy two or three, and he's being lenient. That you're not allowed to buy two or three unless they're home animals, and then you are. Okay, is it both criteria are needed or either criteria is needed? You can buy 4 or 5 sheep from a shepherd. Only if that's with an additional criterion that they are home animals. If they're animals that are generally kept out in the wilderness, even 4 and 5 you can't. You need both criteria in order to buy it. Or a at the end, and he's being lenient. The Amar of a you cannot buy 2 sheep or 2 bunches of wool. That's only if they're kept out in the wilderness. If they're kept at home, and you can even buy 2. Okay, so it's either that you buy a lot or they're animals that are at home. Tashma coming here. Looking by you can buy home animals. They ain't looking in birds and not the animals from the wilderness. And anywhere you are, you can buy 4 or 5. So that makes it very clear. It's one or the other, either a large number or a small number with home animals. Anywhere you are, he's going on the end. That if it's a small number, it's okay if they're home animals, but if it's a large number, that's okay wherever you are. And he's being lenient. Either criteria is enough. Okay, good. You cannot buy from people that watch fruit. You can't buy wood and fruit, okay, because that's not, you're afraid. Where did they get the wood and fruit to sell? Presumably they took it from the garden. They were supposed to be watching. Okay, Rav purchased a bundle of wood from a sharecropper. Abai said, you can't buy from people who watch fruit. You cannot buy from them the wood and fruit.
I'm sorry, isn't an arist someone who actually owns this stuff?
That's the answer. The question is, what was even the question? How do you leave a shomer? That's a normal, watcher, a paid watchman. That he doesn't get a portion in the grain. He in the produce. He just gets a fee. He just gets a straight paycheck. Okay, aval aris to isle begufa, but a sharecropper that gets a portion of the actual produce. He's selling his own produce. He's not necessarily selling. He's not selling the owner's produce. So therefore, that's a reasonable assumption, and you can buy it. I have no idea. Shomri peiros lo kimehen kashen yoshrin umochrin. That's all if they have. Here's another way you can buy from them. If they are obviously doing it in such a blatant, public, out in the open way that they must have been with the owner's, knowledge. Okay, so there they are. They've got a big fruit stand by the edge of the road, right? Fresh produce here. What do they call it? Farm stand or whatever, right? And they're doing it in total public. So clearly the owner would have to be aware of this. All right, what? Well, that's an interesting question. Let's say this is 20 miles out of town, and but still, the assumption seems to be that if it's so public, the word would get to the owner. They would not be that brazen. Okay, they're sitting and they're selling. It's not just like somebody bumps into you in an alley. They got a stand set up. Okay, the baskets of fruit are in front of them. Right, they got a real enterprise going there. They've got these big scales in front of them. That's okay. The kulin sha'amru hatmein, but whatever the circumstances are, if the guy says keep it to yourself, okay, then also that's forbidden. Okay. Now, lochim mehen mipetach hagina, avlo me'achure hagina. Now, again, it's not clear to me whether you need these other conditions as well, right? You can buy from them if they're at the front of the garden, but not in the back alley, not in the back entrance. Now, does that mean the front of the garden you can even buy like a little bundle of fruit without this whole setup, right? So it's not clear like what the various collection of circumstances are. It sounds like that's sufficient. Itmar was taught. Gazlin me'emas mutter liknos himenu. This guy's a Gazlin, sort of like before, we had the, what do you call it? If you remember, we had the tax collector, and you could change money if you're doing it, in his house, or money he's got in his normal wallet, but not from the basket, not from the money funds that, the box that he puts all the tax funds. So here's a similar question. Some guy's known to be a Gazlin. When can you buy things from him? You don't know if this object is stolen. He does have his own stuff. You have to always be choshesh that he's selling you stolen goods. Now, I assume that it has something to do with what types of things is he selling you. Is he selling you a used potato peeler? Probably okay. Is he selling you a VCR brand new in the box? Probably not okay. Fell off a truck somewhere. Okay. So anyway, let's see what the Gemara says. Okay.
Those VCRs.
I know, not VCR. Okay, an iPhone, new in the box. Okay. Itmar, Gaze, when are you allowed? I got to give equal billing to Samsung. When can you buy from him? Until the majority of. Now, what is that? The majority of things that he owns? The majority of things that he sells? It sounds like just the majority of things that he owns. Does Rashi say? I don't know if Rashi even says. What? Rashi says, Rov mamono nishalo, below gzeila. Okay, as long as most of his property. Okay, I don't know even how you measure that, right? Let's say the land in the house, which is obviously, 70% of his net worth, that's his, but all of the objects in the house are stolen. Exactly how you measure it. Anyway, but Rav says it has to be more likely than not that he's selling you his own object. That's the way I would explain it. Achete rov mishalo.
By that logic, you could have done business with Bernie Madoff.
What was most of his property his own?
No, most of his operation was actually legit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The Shmuel Amar afilu miyot shelo, even if only a minority. Okay, which is interesting, right? Because now the question is, I guess the question partly here is like, what Isser are you doing? And the thing that is absent from this entire Gemara, and it came up like once many daf ago, and it comes up in other Gemaras, is the problem of providing a market for stolen goods, because the Gemara sort of says, the Gemara has a saying like, it's not the rat that steals, it's the hole that steals. Because if you don't provide a market, then you're not, you are really making this an enterprise. So here the Gemara seems to be unconcerned with that, right? As long as, like we saw before, and we're going to see again, as long as the object underwent a shinui and technically it's not stolen goods, you can buy it. And there is absent from this discussion a concern of providing a market for the guy. Okay, but the problem still is like what? Like, you don't want to be taking an object that belongs to somebody else. You'll also be stealing an object that belongs to somebody else. So why is it that you can even a miyut is enough? Is it going against the chazaka of chazaka mashetachas yaradam ha'elu shelo, even when you know in fact that the majority of his stuff, or you assume, is stolen? In other cases, for example, the thing that this makes me think of is, if I allowed to lend you an object, if there's more likely than not that you're going to use it to do an isser. Like, for example, it's Shemitah, and you are known to work your field on Shemitah, and you ask me to borrow a hose or something. Can I lend it to you? Because more likely than not, you're going to use it to do an Isser on Shemitah. No, maybe you're just going to use your hose to, fill up your swimming pool in the backyard. So actually there we tend to paskin in terms of that lifnei iver question, that as long as it's like a reasonable possibility, even if it's a minority possibility, even a small possibility, you'll use it for heter, it's not lifnei iver. Okay? But that's like a different thing. That's like, am I abetting your sin? What are you going to use it for in the future? How much do I have to anticipate, and now I seen as a betting? It's like a different cheshbon than, am I taking possession of stolen goods? And if the majority of the goods are stolen, it's not clear to me why I'm allowed to rely on the minority possibility, that they're not, unless it's like chazaka masher tachat yaradam ha'reyu shelo, the chazaka that what you're holding on is yours counters the majority reality that most of your goods are stolen. I really don't understand the logic here, okay? But interestingly, it's going to seem that that's how we paskin. Shmuel amar afilu miyot shelo, even if.
Then what about the stuff over here, like the roaz? So
right. I mean, so then the question is that the point is that all the property isn't his. All of those sheep aren't his.
He doesn't have his own sheep ever?
Yes, I don't know exactly. And I don't know. That's a case where maybe other circumstances, right? How much does this discussion of Rov and Miut deal with like other circumstantial evidence of what's going on, right? So like that whole cheshbon is absent, all right? Right. Your question is, can Shmuel be abstracted to not the question of the majority of your property is yours or it's stolen, but the question of it's 95% likely that you're selling me stolen goods, but 5% likely that you're not, right? Can you abstract that to just that question of how likely is it, as opposed to what is the quantity of stolen goods that you have? I don't know.
If you want to make this, then harmonize with our Mishnah, with the Roa and the whoever else it is, then it would be it's only if the Roa is only Roa other behemoth. But if he puts his own animals in there too,
right, which is sort of like the question maybe about the Aris, a little bit the question of the Aris before. So it's hard to know how to abstract and generalize this, and it's really hard to know what the guiding principle here is. Okay, even if only a minority is it. Because by the way, I should say, right, also the shepherd, you don't know he's a goslin. So by the shepherd, you could say, even if it's 10% likely, maybe I should assume the best of people, right? And I should assume 10% likely he's from his own sheep. Why shouldn't I assume that he's doing that he's an honest guy? Here, the guy's a goslin. 70% of the goods in his home are stolen goods, right? It seems very strange that you're allowed, even miut shelo you can buy from him. What?
That he also has some property.
I understand, but the majority are stolen, and he's a goslin. I find it hard to understand. Okay. What? And you may be keeping him in business. Okay. So Orile Rav Yehuda Ada Daila. So Rav Yehuda taught Ada, who is his attendant, a rabbinic attendant. Kedivi Omer Afilu Miut Shelo. Even as long as the minority is his, you can buy from a goslin. Okay. Fascinating. Now, a different question, which I don't know why it's related here. It should have gone on the previous sugya. Mamun Masur, the money of a person who is an informer. Now, you would normally assume the word informer means he informs of the government and hands somebody over to the government, which was endangering somebody's life. Rashi points us to a discussion of in Avodah Zarah which might remind you of the Rav story, that even if he's just handing property of somebody over to the government, he's considered a rodef, because when you have property of somebody that gets the government's claws into that person and eventually could endanger that person's life. So even somebody who's just moser mamun chavero is considered as a rodef. Okay, so he says this case of muster is even just handing over property of somebody else to the government. So that person, Reuven, is handing over Shimon's property to the government. What's the story with Reuven's property? You can just willfully destroy Reuven's property, like presumably as some type of a punishment, even if you're not going to kill Reuven in the act.
Go into his field and torch it.
Yeah, exactly. You could torch his field. Some type of societal, way of controlling this. You understand this, right? You had to keep away from the government, and right, they would endanger the Jewish community. So if we're allowed to, kill Reuven, as the Gemara Avodah Zarah says, because of that, so we can go ahead and torch his property. You're not allowed. If his money should not be more valuable than his person, so if you can actually, kill him in order to stop him, you can torch his property. Now, of course, the different argument could be you could kill him in the process when he's, to stop him from doing it, like the rodef who's in the act. This is like an after the fact punishment. It's not exactly the same as stopping a person in the act. Okay, maybe it's a before the fact punishment. I don't know. No, you can't destroy his property. No, because even though the property will go down to his kids, and even though you can stop him and he deserves to be stopped and maybe punished, but it's not fair to the kids. Maybe you'll have kids that are good kids and not as rishonim like him. The righteous, the wicked man will prepare, and the righteous one will wear it. So he's amassing all of this wealth, and again, maybe part of the issue is that maybe he gets paid for this service to the government. Okay, maybe that's part of it. Anyway, so the kids, at least, why should you destroy the property? That at least his kids get it, which is interesting, because still, even if that's a concern, it's also not fair that the kids don't have a father. You have to do stuff in order to protect the interests of the community. If this was really seen as endangering the community,
what was that issue of kavod aviv? Remember we had that?
Yeah, that was about the kids returning stolen objects. Right. Okay. Anyway, this is a little bit of a digression going back to yesterday's discussion. Back to we'll see what this is. Sharecropper. Again, it's not. This is now actually continuing to some degree with the digression. possession. It's no longer a question about whether you assume it's stolen goods or not, but about, well, we'll see, about like, let's read it. Rav Chisda Haveleyahu Arisa, he had a sharecropper. He would weigh and give, weigh and take. So what's the matter with that? So Rashi says it means, well, maybe it means that he would be overly precise in the division. He wouldn't sort of just like, he was so big deal. People are entitled to be precise and making sure they're getting exactly what's coming to them. So the other explanation Rashi has is he would divide it 50-50, and normal sharecroppers get only like a quarter or a third. But still, if that's the deal that Rav Chisda made, big deal. Okay, you made the deal, live with it. So the Marsha has the better explanation. I think the Marsha says it means that he would take with one set of measures and he'd give with another set of measures, meaning it's the Evan va'avin, right? So when I weigh up my 10 pounds, I'm using one set of weights. When I weigh up the 10 pounds you, the owner, gets, I use a different set of weights, okay? So anyway, he was treating Rav Chisda, okay? So Rav Chisda basically removed him. He fired him. Okay, Kara Nafshe, so Rav Chisda said about himself, V'tzafun l'tzadik chel chote, and treasured away for the righteous person is the wealth of the sinner. So it's interesting. He fired him in what? He took his portion? Unit. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe that was a clause in the contract that if that you forfeit your whatever. But anyway, it sort of echoes both points before. Number one is he was stealing from the owner. And number two is, the wealth of the wicked can go to somebody who deserves it. All right. Now the Gemara says like this: Kimati kvas chanav ki yivatza ki yishal Eloha nafsho. Now we're going to look at a different pasuk. What benefit is it? Now, fascinating. It took us 118 daf to finally get to the issue of transgression. Right, the entire Masechet was all about the consequences, the sort of financial consequences of theft and mazik and chovel and all of that. Almost completely absent was the issue about like how usher it is and how bad it is what the person is doing. And sometimes it was really a problem because it talked about, takanas hashavim, and the God doesn't have to pay for this, and the Gazan can keep the usage, and all these types of things which really bothered us. Finally, now at the end, the Gemara is turning to the question about how terrible this act of theft is. So let's take a look. What good is it for the flatterer, there's other, how do they translate the word? Hypocrite, okay. If he steals, it's like to take money that is not his. The Lord will remove his soul. So Rav Huna Rav Chisda Chadamar Nafsho Shel Dinigzal. It means the soul of the person he is stealing from, which means you say you're just stealing this person's wealth, but you are not appreciating the enormity of your action. Your taking of his wealth really is a type of a murder. Of course, why it turns it to God? God will take his soul. But okay, it means, he'll die, so you effectively can cause him to be taking an act of taking his life. No, it means God will kill the Gazlan. Okay, either way, it's talking about the enormity of the sin. These are the ways of all who take ill-gotten gain. They take the soul of the owner of the property. They think they're just taking property, but they're actually taking the person's life. No, God will take the soul of the Gazlan. Do not steal from the poor person. You think, he's a poor person, you can get away with it. Do not trample down on the poor person in the gate. God will come and fight their fight. The kava is kovehem nafesh, and will steal from their stealers a soul. Meaning, so you stole from them, God will take away your soul. Okay. Now the one that says the soul of the Gazlan, what does he do with his other pasuk that says that when you take their soul, the soul of the owner, which seems to be the nigzal, the one who is stolen from? No, my balav dahashta. No. It means God will take the soul of the current owner, again, of the Gazlan. So the Gazlan will be punished as a result.
Gazlan's corner.
There you go. Like the Haksiv Koveham Nafesh, that it says that if you say it focuses on, it's like taking the soul of the Nigzal. What about the verse that says that God will steal their soul of the Gazan? And of course, you can say both are true. Some psukim talk about killing the Nigzal, other psukim talk about the Gazan being deserving of death. But no, but what it says. So that's essentially what the answer is. Matam Kamma. Matam the koves koveham. Why will God take the soul, not murder, whatever, execute the Gazlan, take the soul of the Gazlan? Mishum the kavoy nafesh, because the Gazlan took the soul of the Nigzal. Both are true. It's like murdering the Nigzal, and therefore you're deserving of death. Okay, so finally we get this the exhortations about it are finally coming at the way end of the Masechet, and and really talking about the enormity of it. It's like you actually murdered, especially a poor person. They can't put food on the table. Okay, how tragic that is.
What's the force of that word likboa? It just says like I'll fix you. Like
No, I don't know. I don't think it's from the word keva. You have to ask the biblical grammarians, but it seems more to be like to seize, to steal, to take. Okay, I'm Rabbi Yochanan. So now just saying it as a straight statement, not a different drash of a pasuk, and really emphasizing, even if it's just $1, actually a pruta is more like a penny. Even if you just take a penny, it's like you took their soul. Reading the pasuk like one of the readings before, it's the simple sense of the pasuk. It is like taking their soul. Okay, the Omer, and it says, you they will the Ganav will eat your bread and your harvest. It will be like is really it will be like they are killing your children. The Omer, the verse says, now of course the simple sense is that if you need the money and you're poor and you can't put food on the table and so on, but I think also there's a sense here of particularly of like that of violation, right? Particularly in the case of Geneva, but it's true, I mean, even in Gzela as well. In Geneva, they talk about that sense of losing that sense of security in your own home, the one place you thought you were protected, right? And now it's being just sort of, violated. So there's that, so I think that's also a piece of it. Omer, and it also says, from the Hamas, now Hamas is understood rabbinically to mean taking something and paying the owner, but forcing the owner to sell when the owner didn't want to sell. Okay, so because of the Hamas of the sons of Yehuda, they have spilled, innocent blood. So thank you so much. Just like taking, just the act of Hamas is like spilling blood. The Omer, and it says, El Shaul ve'el Beit Hadamim, for Shaul in the house of blood, Al Asher Himita Givonim. He killed the Givonim. And the Gemara is going to say he didn't actually directly kill the Givonim. What he did was he prevented them from earning a livelihood. Okay, so Mai Omer, why do you need all 4 psukim? Because you're going to say Nefesh Didei. Yes, it's like you took the soul of the person you stole from. But it's not as bad as actually killing their children. No, it says it's like you took the flesh from their children. You killed their children. You prevented them from getting food, fed. That's only if you steal without reimbursing. If you steal and you reimburse, so at least the guy has money to put food on the table. He might have lost his object. So maybe that's not so bad. It's not like it's bad, but it's not like you killed him. Hamas meaning here understood to mean taking and forcing a guy to sell. They spilled innocent blood. Okay, so again, it's not like just the guy doesn't have money to put food on the table. It really is that sense of, violation, being stripped of things that are part of you, and so on. That's only if you directly took it. If you indirectly caused it, you would not say that. That Shaul killed the Givonim. Where did we ever find that Shaul killed the Givonim? Because he wiped out Nov, the city of Kohanim. So he destroyed the business of the Givonim, because the Givonim, were put to work for the Beis HaMikdash, or for the Mikdash, and they were working for the Kohanim. So when he wiped out the city of Kohanim, there goes the jobs of all the Givonim that were working for them. So it's like he killed the Givonim as well. Okay, so here you have some very heavy rhetoric about about how terrible, and exhortations, which again, it's quite fascinating that this is left to the very last daf. Yes.
And how we reconcile with the way that the Gunna was treated throughout the homicide. The homicide, we've been really, that's okay, or really, he just gets off with that, and then to end it with this, you're like, where is it?
Right. So I don't know, I would say, so that's, I think, the question that we're supposed to be asking, the juxtaposition of it's so terrible, and then you have this kind of shove him, and if he uses an object, he doesn't have to pay for it, and if he makes the animal fatter, he can ask for the money difference, and he can say, to some degree, I think it's sort of this balance between, I don't know if I'd call it idealism, but anyway, idealism and realism. okay, it's a terrible sin, but you got to have certain, but in order to get people to give the objects back, and in order to actually address the real issues, it's sort of like, not to get political, but it's sort of like, people that sort of talk about law and order and let's lock them all up is not necessarily the best way to address the problems of crime in society, right? So I think that that's part of it. Like, yes, it's a terrible thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the right way of making society run more smoothly and more justly, comes from, overly harsh reaction to this. I don't know. Now, it still seems to us it was a little bit too soft, the rest of the Masechet, but I do think there's a difference between how terrible the sin is and what the practical solution is. Yes.
With due respect, there's a better example from last night's debate.
Let's not get too political. Yes.
Better example. Listen, you didn't pay a tax, but that was the law. I used the law. I used the law.
So that's
That's
the flip side of it.
That's exactly
right. Right. So meaning
exactly
it's not right. Meaning, I think that is the thing, that there seem to be way too many loopholes, right? But I do think that there is saying that there's a difference between like what the law and what the sort of best societal response is and what the whatever is. Okay. So now it sounds like that.
Don't do business with him anymore.
Okay. Avalokin min hanashim, you can buy from women in different places things that's normal for them to sell. What did it say in the Mishnah again? Wool garments in Judea and linen garments in the Galilee and so on. Okay. Because you're not afraid that they're doing it without their husband's permission. That's like a standard business that women do in those areas. Tana Rabbanan, again, with the assumption that all the property is their husband. Tana Rabbanan, lo kimin nashim klei tzimer b'Yehuda, wool garments in Judea, v'klei pisha v'kalios linen in the Galilee. But do not buy from them, wine and oil and flour. I don't know. Either you're afraid that their husbands have, vineyard and they're doing it unjustly, or maybe they're just trying to make some money. So the money that they're supposed to be using, the wine they're supposed to be using for the house, they sell a little bit off to the side. So here's whatever. The reality is very different from ours, where the husband totally controlled all of and owned, all the property. So those types of things you don't buy. That's not the norm for them to have the right to be selling those things. And you can't buy from slaves. Or not from children. Again, all these things are the default assumption is they do not have the right to be doing this. Actually, no. Women are, you ever hear the idea of pin money, right? Yeah. So women actually are allowed to sell 4 and 5. I don't know if 4 and 5 what, but anyway, to sell. Does Rashi say 4 and 5 what? No. Anyway, so I'm not sure if it's a number of objects or anyway, but she's allowed to sell a certain small number of things because for pin money, in order to buy a little hat for her head. So yes, women do have a default permission from their husbands to to sell.
Well, how many hats can you?
I don't know. To sell like small little things. Again, I don't know exactly what 4 and 5 is. Chamish of the sheep, I think so. What does the English say? 4 and 5 what? Does it say?
Little things.
4 and 5 small objects.
4 and 5 dinars.
Dinars. I was wondering if it was a money amount. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. It was right there in the Gemara. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Missed that word. There you go. Who needs English? It's in the Gemara. Okay. Anyway, 4 and 5 dinars. You can sell anyway, 4 and 5 dinars is not a small amount. A dinar is a large amount. Like, what is it? $20, $100? I don't know what it is.
Hats are expensive.
Well, depending whether it's a gold dinar.
Anyway, what does that mean? Every transaction can mean 4 and 5 dinar? 4 and 5 dinar a month? Like, I don't know how you're supposed to determine that. Anyway, moving on.
How much is Sheila? It's like when you get a check signed by a second person from your board or whatever, if it's big enough. Right? If it's under a certain amount, we trust her that she's within what she's allowed.
So you just say every transaction within 4 and 5 dinar. Could be 4 and 5 dinars are a significant amount. I mean, not a trivial amount. Okay. The kulan she'amru lihatmin, in any of these cases, if they say keep it to yourself, keep it quiet, a sort forbidden. Gabayit tzedakah lo kimen davar muat avlo davar merubeh. Now, if the question is who is getting from whom in this line? Until now, it means you can purchase from them. So now it's saying you can buy from Gabay Tzedakah a little thing and not a lot.
Gabay Tzedakah can get from them.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying you'll see the grammar won't work in the rest of it. Okay, but yes, I agree here that the sense of this line is Gabay Tzedakah can purchase from them, from women, like a little thing and not a lot.
So I don't understand. They want to give tzedakah. Do you assume this is still in fun?
Right, exactly. So I'm sorry. So it's not purchase. You're right. I'm sorry. Okay, the Gemara accept. You're right, because that's going to come up at the end. So the Gabbai Tzedakah can accept small little donations, right? So they go knocking door to door, and the woman or the slave says, "Here's $5." The wife or the slave, you don't have to say, "All right, let bring out your husband. Let me make sure he's okay with it." So the same way, there's a presumption that they can, certain things they're allowed to sell. There's also a presumption that the master or the husband or whatever will be the father will be okay with them giving a little amount of money or a little amount of their of their food, whatever, to the Gabbai Tzedakah. So Gabbai Tzedakah can take small donations from them. The Habadadin lochim mehem zeitim b'midah v'shemen b'midah. So now the wine pressers, the people that have the business of pressing, of oil, other people's oil, you can take large amounts of oil from them, similar to the discussion before about 4 and 5 sheep, because then you're not afraid that they're stealing it. But not a small amount of olives and of oil that you are afraid that they're stealing. Reb Shimon Gamliel, Omer lochimi nashim zeitim b'moed. So I have the word bimuat. You can take olives in a small amount or on Yontif time from women. B'galil ha'elyon in the upper galley. Shapamim adam boshin kor petach beitov v'notin lisho mocheret, which is really lovely. A person is afraid to sell such small amounts. Like it's announcing maybe that he does not have how hard up he is, that he has to sell like even these small amounts. So because it is more societally acceptable for women to sell small amounts, as we've seen, than for men if they're having a business, why he's selling these tiny little things. So sometimes he gets his wife to do it for him. So even though this so anyway, whatever those circumstances are, since women will more often sell small amounts, even things that we maybe did not list before were normally sold by women, sometimes you can buy from women. Ravina Ikla Lebei Mechuzah. Ravina came to Bei Mechuzah. Asu Nashe to Bei Mechuzah. The women of Mechuzah came out. Ramu Kamei Kavli V'Shiri. They threw to him like necklaces and bracelets, golden objects to give to tzedakah. He was there collecting tzedakah. Kavu Minayu, he accepted. Amle Rabbi Tosfa Ravina. So Rabbi Tosfa said to Ravina, "Vatanya Gabbai Tzedakah Mekabli Mehen Davar Muat Avalo Davar Meruba." You can only take except from within small donations, not big donations. He said back, "Hani Livnei Mechuzah Davar Muat." Bnei Mechuzah are very wealthy, so for them this counts as a small donation. Okay, so that is taking things that you're afraid might be stolen. All right, Mishnah. And even things that are not we would not consider like technically stolen. To us, of course, the whole patriarchal sort of aspect that obviously is very difficult. But that was the reality of society. So to put like the positive light, bracketing obviously the whole patriarchal nature. But the point is, even if you're working, even if you're a member of the household, you can't give something away if you don't have rights to it, and this is like an issue that comes up all the time. Like you're dealing with you're dealing in a store with the employee, or somebody, a waiter or whatever. He says, don't worry about it. It's on the house. Just take it or whatever, something like that. Well, you're not the owner. Are you allowed? Do you have the right to tell me that it's on the house? So those are real questions, right, that come up. So and employees helping themselves is a little bit different. To stuff that's in the the what is it called, the supply closet, right? So the idea here that even though you to a certain degree are part of, it's not out and out theft, but it still is gzeila if you don't have rights to that. All right, it's the whole issue about how people rationalize. They actually did a study once where they put out like a bottle of soda, an unmarked bottle of soda, like in the employee lounge, and like they saw people would help themselves to it, right? And then they would put just $1 on the table, and nobody would take it. So the things we can rationalize to ourselves, it's just soda. I'm sure anybody would be okay with me, whatever, right? So either what?
Clearly hefker. The soda's just.
It's sitting there. Clearly, it's meant to be taken, right? Anyway, all right. So next Mishnah. Muchin. So that's how the Gemara ends. Okay, with this real technical discussion of what property, if you're working for somebody, is it assumed that they're okay with you keeping? And what do you have to know technically it belongs to the owner, and we can't assume they're okay with you keeping it to yourself. Okay, to the point that it's so technical and tiny, but to me it's very powerful in terms of what it shows about how precise and careful you have to be. Okay, so muchin shakovis moti arelu shalo. If the launderer takes out some of the stuffing from a pillow or whatever, some of it falls out in the process, it's assumed that the owner doesn't care, he's allowed to keep it. Vasorek moti arelu shalo. But if the comber, I don't know if comber flax or I don't know exactly what these professions are. Anyway, if some of the material comes out in the combing, he has to return it to the owner. It's consumed that the owner wants that back. Koves noto gimel chutim vein shalo. The launderer takes 3 strings. They would sometimes put strings at the bottom of a garment, and he would like remove them, in the process. Like maybe they would be strings that would like sew the socks together or something. Anyway, so he takes out those 3 strings, and those are assumed that he can keep. Any more strings of it goes to the owner. If the strings at the bottom of the garment were black on white, clearly they don't belong on the garment, and he can take it all and keep it. If a tailor leaves over a thread, and it's long enough thread that you can actually use it to sew, to do enough times a stitch with, or a little patch of clothing that is 3 by 3 finger breadths. It's assumed that the owner, if that's what's left over, again, this is somebody that you've hired to do, you've presumably given them the material, and then they have to give you this material back. It's assumed that the owner still wants that. Now, how about a carpenter? So anything that falls off, he's like, again, you gave him the lumber, and he's there, and he's planing it or whatever he's doing. So if something comes off b'ma'atzad, which is, I think, some type of a plane, harei elu shalo. Those are considered to be like small chips, and the owner doesn't care, and he gets to keep it. Ubekashio, things that come up with a hat chip, those are bigger chips. That's Shabalabayas. Then it's concerned that the owner does want those wood chips, and you have to give it to the owner. But if he was working, he was sort of brought into the owner's home and sent down to the owner's workroom in the basement. Then often is some Shabalabayas. Even like the sawdust belongs to the Balabayas. If you're working in the house, it's assumed that you leave everything for the owner. If you're working in your house, some things are so trivial you don't have to deliver back to the owner. You can purchase from a launderer, you can purchase like some of the stuffing material, because as we read in the Mishnah, if it falls out, he's allowed to keep it. Okay, you can also take 2 of the upper threads. I don't know the exact reality, but again, the way I imagine it, it's sort of something like sometimes they sew your socks together, when they launder them, so they don't whatever. So he removes those threads and he keeps it. This is something I didn't really fully understand. It's some type of a way that he weaves in some thread so that when you pull the garment can stretch. And it says that he should not put into the garment more than 3 of these. I really don't understand what it's talking about. The lo yisro kabeged l'shesyav el arvo. When he is now, what's interesting is because now we're no longer going on what are the small little things he's allowed to keep, but we're actually talking to him. It's fascinating that this is here about how he has to do his job, the technical ways in which you have to do the job to protect the property of the person who you're doing. So we're giving like him instructions and like how to launder clothing in a way that respects the property of the person. Okay, so somehow by putting in more than 3 of these stitches, it might hurt the clothes. I don't know exactly what those stitches are. And this is when you're combing the garment. Don't comb it. I forget which is the warp and which is the woof. What does it say? One of them is the warp and the other is warp. Okay. Anyway, one of you is warp and one is warp. So when you're combing the garment, comb it towards the sheti, but not towards the arev. Right? The woof. Warp. Okay. Now what? I don't know if that helps because I don't know what warp is. I don't know what warp is. Anyway, fine. Comb it like like when they say when you cut meat, like cut against the grain, right? So when you comb like in this way or in that way. So comb with the warp and not with the woof. Apparently, the other way will damage the garment. Okay. You have to what?
The vertical threads of
the vertical one.
Right. What's vertical is horizontal.
Okay, well, but okay. And Shesi is the warp, so you comb it vertically and not horizontally. Okay, I guess that means you're like stretching something more vertical. It seems that's more going with the grain than against the grain.
Yeah, when you use something, those are the threads that are like connected from the top to bottom, and the woof is something.
Right, that goes. I see. It goes through like that. Okay, so you go with the warp and not with the woof. Now, if you let's say have to trim a garment, right, to get it even or whatever, something like that. So it says umashveil arkavol l'rochvo. trim it at the length, not at the width, because you can always like make the length a little. If you imagine something, that's like I don't know. I'm trying to think, like if you imagine, I don't know, a scarf, right? So if you trim the edges, you trim the length, so you have a slightly shorter scarf, but it's even. But if you trim the width, it's like clearly that more compromises the integrity of the garment if you're trimming the width than if you're trimming the length. Okay. The imbalash voso atefach rishai. And if you have to really like make it even, you can even up to a tefach trim off if it's necessary to like even out the garment. So it's so funny. It's basically just telling you how to do your job in a way that respects the property of the owner. All right. And you don't just assume like that the market will take care, will take care of that, right? Like this guy does a bad, this guy, don't give your garments to him. They do it in a way that ruins the garments or whatever.
Also you trim off the tefach, right?
Yeah.
Who gets that piece?
Well, that's an interesting question, but that's not what's directly being addressed
Well,
here. No, it's not all about who gets it, like which way you comb the garment. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's a little connected because if I comb it one way, it'll produce more threads that I'll be able to keep for myself. Maybe that's true. Anyway, Amar Marsh. So anyway, he gets to keep 2 threads. Don't we say that up to 3 threads he gets to keep? Lo kasha. Habalimi habakitni. Are they thick threads or thin threads? Thick 2, thin 3. Do not comb it with the warp, the length, but rather the width. Okay. Tatanya ipcho. Don't we have a price that says the opposite? Though the width, the woof and not the warp. Lo kasha. Habaklima habasarvala. Is it a cloak or is it a coat? What difference does it make? So Rashi basically says that let me remind myself what Rashi says. Rashi says a sarvala is made more for the appearances. So when you do it for the Shesi way, the warp way, anyway, the kids are one way it looks nicer, the other way it lasts longer. Okay, so it's like, when I go to the dry cleaner, they have this sign up that says something like, I don't know, get your clothes dry cleaned regularly. But I think if you read the literature, like if you over dry clean your clothes, it's not good for them in terms of them lasting long. So some things make it look, one way makes it look nicer, the other thing makes it last longer. And so something that's basically for looking nice, you do it in a way that makes it look nicer. The thing that's there more for, just keeping you warm, you do it in a way that makes it last longer. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this: don't put more of these 3 stitches in it that are made for stretching it. By Rabbi Yirmiyah, what counts as stitch? Up and down is 1 stitch. Oh, Dilma, so don't do 3, up and downs. Oh, Dilma, tuye vasuye tray. Going in one way and coming back out the other way counts as 2. So, take, all right, we don't know. You trim it lengthwise, but not widthwise. Vatanya Ipcha, Bryce says the opposite. Lokasha, Habaglima Habahamyune. One is a cloak, and the other is a hamyune, which Rashi says is that basically you see more the edge, the lengthwise edges, you don't see the widthwise edges. So trimming it, I don't exactly know what it is. What does it say? It is like a belt? I think it's a belt, right? So if it's a belt, somehow Rashi says that trimming the width is not as apparent as trimming the length.
It says because the note here says the length is not visible when it's worn.
Right, when it's visible, you don't see the length. So it's more important to have a good-looking width than it is. The length could be a little bit uneven because it overlaps, I guess, when you tie it around yourself. Okay, Tana Rabbanan. When it comes to a comber as opposed to a launderer, you cannot buy the stuffing because he's not entitled to that. But in places where the custom is that he gets to keep it, then you can purchase it from him. In any places you can buy from people pillows filled with stuffing, because my time of why? Even if he stole the stuffing, now it's a shinoi. So again, here we just have completely, aren't you helping him provide a market? Maybe again, you don't have to suspect him. Maybe it's even if he stole it, it was a shinoi. But again, it gets back to those interesting questions of providing a market. You do not buy from a weaver. Lo irin velo nirin, neither irin and nirin, which is Rashi, it's basically like the warp and the woof that's like around the shuttle. Is that what it's called? The shuttle or whatever? It's a spindle. Okay. So again, because all of that, if there's any leftover thread, it all goes to the owner. Velo punkalin, velo shure pakiot. And all of these are different types of things that are, I don't know, how do they translate it? Different types of things that are left on the loom or something. What did I say there?
Probably if they say tapestry bobbins. Then
Bobbins,
then
yeah.
explain it.
I looked it up in the English too. Bobbins. That helped me a lot. Okay.
And
I thought
it's
Bobbins was from The Hobbit.
No, it's the
Baggins.
Baggins. Oh, that's
it's where the thread comes from.
It's where the thread comes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, you don't buy these different types of things which are part of the threading of which are the threads that are used or the implements because those are all belong to the owner. Of a loki man begin minumar, but what you can buy is a garment that is made out of a patchwork garment. Even though reasonably you could say, where did he get all those patches? I wonder. Okay, nevertheless, okay, because of this idea of he's kona with a shinoi, even if he stole those patches, and hopefully he didn't, but he's kona with a shinoi. Erev vesheti tavui vari. You can also buy from them warp and woof if it is spun or woven, because again, even though he's not supposed to keep the warp and woof, if he did keep it, if he did steal it, at least he's kona with a shinoi because he has now spun and woven it. Amri, so now the Gemara says, Hashta tavi shakil. If you can take it once it's spun, arugni by. Of course, once it's woven, the weaving comes after the spinning. So of course, it's more of a shinoi. So it says no. My arid tichi. No, woven would mean here not woven after spinning, but a type of a twisted string. So with it's not spun, but it's twisted instead. But either of those is a shinoi. Tano baran. Ein lokin minat saval. You do not buy from a dyer. Lo otot v'lo dugmaot, neither samples or tests or samples. Rashi says that an oat is basically you bring him a little bit of clothing and you say, here, practice the dye on this piece of the garment before you do it on the whole garment. And a dugma, an example, is you actually say, here's an example of the color I want the garment to look like in the end. Okay, so these are little things that the owner would give to the dyer so he would be able to test or know what the owner wanted. And obviously now if the dyer is selling these little samples, you can't buy them from him because we presume the owner wants them back. Okay, so it's quite fascinating. Even these tiny little things, we assume the owner wants them back. Below tlushim shotzemer, and not not sort of being plucked off wool from presumably garments that he was working with, because in the process of dyeing, some wool comes off. We assume the owner wants it back. A loki man beget savua, but if you can buy a actual dyed garment, because maybe who knows, maybe the owner said, forget it, you ruined it, keep it, or whatever, and even if he did steal it, he was kona with a shinoi. So it would be interesting that Seva is a shinoi. What is that? A shinoi Hashem? Is that really a shinoi? Anyway, tavui beget savua, tavui begadim. Tavui ubegadim, and spun wool and clothes, because all of those things, if you got the raw wool, we assume by spinning it and making it into clothes, he was kona it. Hashta tavui shakil, if it's just spinning the wool, you can buy it because he's kona with a shinoi. Begadim you buy it, so certainly once it's already a garment. So the Gemara says, my begadim namti. No, clothes mean not a whole woven garment, it means like a piece of felt. So that was not spun, it was a pressed piece of wool. Also that you can buy from him. Again,
all this in the Gozilaiti.
I know. Sabon, right. You give leather to the tanner to turn it into, you give skin to the tanner to turn it into leather. Okay, so the cut off the trimmed pieces of the piece of the skin and the sort of the hair that comes off in the process of working the skin. I'm sorry, I think I misread that. Anyway, that goes to the owner. You assume the owner wants the trimmed pieces of leather. But the stuff that comes off when you're submerging it in water, whatever pieces come to the top of the water, you get to keep that. Again, all this stuff seems so tiny and trivial, but to me it's like very beautiful, that A, the Masechet ends with finally some exhortations about how bad it is to steal, and B, this tiny sense of like every little penny you have to be exacting about. Do I have a right to keep this, this little stuff that was left over? It's not mine. So that gets back to the point of even if you steal a pruta, it's like you steal the life. You have to really care about every little pruta. I find it very powerful. Okay. If it was black thread on white, then even if it's multiple threads, the launderer can keep it. I'm Rav Yehuda. Kitzra Shmei, the name of a launderer in Aramaic is Kitzra. The Kitzra Shakil, and he can take the stuff at the edge of the garment, the strings at the edge of the garment. Okay, or what Rashi says, what he trims off the garment. Those extra threads that are added at the bottom of the garment, even though they're normally taken off by the launderer, if you don't take them off, then they count towards tchelet, meaning tzitzis. What does that mean? It means you put your tzitzis, you have to put them not at the very edge of the garment, but like a little bit inset into the garment. Okay, so where do you measure the edge of the garment from which you have to go, inset the tzitzit? So here it says you measure it, if those 3 strings are on, you measure it from those strings. You don't have to pretend like the strings aren't there and go more into the garment. Okay, which you could have easily said opposite. You could have said if those threads are meant to be removed, then you're not understanding, Jenna?
I don't know how you knew that's what I would have thought it meant. Then you do have to start from where those are.
Meaning look at Rashi. Rashi says Osan Shlosha. It's like 8 lines down in the left-hand side, or from the narrow lines. Osan Shlosha Chutinim Lo Katzran HaKoves. If they were not cut off, Olan Lemidas Malek Kesher Godel Shetar Laharchikat Tchelet. You have to keep you have to put the Tchelet Shel Tzitzis. You have to put it meaning the size of a of a what do you call it, of like a thumb width away from the edge of the garment. Misvat HaBeged Mesechus Menachot. Right, so if you look at a normal tzitzit, right, the strings are coming down like from this.
Yeah.
Like you ever see it, like right,
Yeah.
right. So it has to be this width from the edge of the garment.
Right.
Okay, so where do you start counting the edge? So if these 3 strings are still here, you count the edge from they're included in the garment. Even you don't pretend as if they're made to be removed. They're not part of the garment. If you're not removing them, they are part of the
You get
garment.
that extra
So you just
quarter of a centimeter.
Yeah, you don't have to move it in. You can move it in from this point and not from that point, right? So it's just a technical point of where do you start your tzitzit string from, okay? The Yitzhak Greek Kapitolai, but Yitzhak, my son, is makbid. He doesn't count the garment starting there. He only counts the garment starting after the 3 strings. If the tailor leaves over a thread that's enough as the size of a needle or whatever, enough to thread with it to make a stitch, then it goes to the owner. Then it's significant enough that it goes back to the owner. Again, the owner provided the thread. Okay, the Kamma lead for how much is enough thread to stitch with? Amravasi malay machat the length of the needle, outside of the needle. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Malay machat the chutz lamachat kamalay machat doesn't mean the length of the needle plus outside of the needle another needle's length. So essentially, it's 2 needles' length. Or the length of the needle plus a little bit more, to go outside through the hole of the needle. Tashma, Titania, if the tailor leaves over a string not enough to stitch with, or a little patch less than 3 by 3 finger widths, so meaning the owner is still entitled to get them if he wants to. The default in these cases, when it's that small, is that the tailor keeps it, but that doesn't mean the owner isn't entitled to ask for it back if he wants to. So if the owner is makbid, you give it to the owner. Ein balabais makbid. If he's not makbid, which is the presumption in this case, harei elu shalo, he gets to keep it. So if you say that the amount that goes to the owner is when it's a double needle length, so we understand why you have to say less than that goes to the tailor, because less than that is at least somewhat usable. You can use it to make like a sichsa. What is sichsa again here? Oh, one of those stitches that we discussed earlier that you make in these garments. But if the only thing that the owner gets, up to the point that it's even just a needle length plus a little bit more, so if less than that goes to the tailor, less than that, what do you use a tiny little piece of thread, a half a centimeter wide for? Lemai chazi, why are we even saying it goes to the tailor? Nobody has any use for it. So the says, we're talking about something a little bit bigger, so less than that is at least it's meaningful to say it belongs to the tailor. There's some way to use something smaller than that. Shma mina, that makes sense. Okay. Masha Kharash, what the carpenter comes off from the planing, that goes to the carpenter, and what comes off from the hatcheting, that goes to the owner. So, Ramini, I'll ask you on this. Masha Kharash motzi b'ma'atzad, what comes off through, I think this means a plane, and nifsak b'magera, and stuff that comes off with a saw, hare elu shaval abayit, it goes to the owner. So our Mishnah said the ma'atzad goes to the carpenter, and this Breita says that the stuff that comes off with the plane goes to the owner. Okay, and the end of the Breita is Vayotzi mitakas miktach or makteh. How do you pronounce it? Makdeach, okay, which is an awl, right? Like a pointy thing that you make a hole in. So that's tiny little shavings that don't do anybody any good. Okay, umitachas rihatni, and from a rihatni, which is I have no idea what that is. That's a plane. Vanigra b'magera, or something that came with a saw, but not because you're sawing it like like down. You're sort of shaving it with a saw. So those smaller things, the carpenter gets to keep it. So anyway, we got the problem. In our Mishnah, it says the Magera, the carpenter keeps it. Here it says the Magera, the owner keeps it. So Amar Rava, Ba'asher de Tana Didan, in the place of our Tana of our Mishnah, Ikatarti. There are two types of Mageras. Chatzini, Ikatarti Chatzini. There are two types of Chatzinis of Magera. Okay, L'Rabasi Karle Kashal. Actually, not Magera, Ma'atzads. Okay, so the big one they call a kashal. Ulezutrasi, the small one, kareli ma'atzad. They call it ma'atzad. So that's why Mishnah said the stuff from the ma'atzad goes to the carpenter, and from the kashal goes to the owner, because that basically means the small and the big version of this ma'atzad. Okay, in the place of the other Tana, the bright that we quoted, Chadu, there's only one. They only have one of these ma'atzads, and it's the big one. The karlu matzad, and they call it a matzad, and therefore, since it's therefore they say the matzad goes to the owner because they're talking about the big version. Our Mishnah says the matzad goes to the carpenter because when you have two types, the matzad you use for the small version, and that goes to the carpenter, and the bigger version is what goes to the owner. Fine. But if the guy was working in the owner's, workspace, then everything gets left to the owner. Okay. People that carve stones, there's no taking the remnants of the pebbles. That's not considered stealing, because again, that's the case. I guess you assume any of the stuff that comes off from the carving of the stones, the owner doesn't want. People that prune trees and prune vines, or that they cut down, thorn bushes, or they weed, in gardens. Or they remove vegetables, extra like crowded vegetables. So in all these cases, do they get to get the stuff that they're pulling out of the ground? If the owner wants them, then it is a problem. He doesn't care. Of course, it would be nice if we told you what the default was. Okay. Until now, we've been saying what the default is. This doesn't really help. Maybe it means there's no default. You have to clarify in each case. I'm Rav Yehuda. Kashus v'chaziz ein bo mishum gezel, ba'asher dekapid yesh bo mishum gezel. Kashus and chaziz, which are different types of things that grow with the grain. Okay. So if you basically I don't know, how do they explain what kashus and chaziz are? Hops and green grain. So sometimes these are cut down and then they regrow. And the classic thing would be to cut them and to have the grain go again. So you're working. Okay. Anyway, so you're working for the owner. Again, is it something that you get to keep this or not? So he says the default is the default is that you do get to keep them. But if the owner says he wants them, then it is a problem. In Masamachasya, we make a place where we assume that people are makpid, and therefore it is a problem. Again, ending on a very mundane note, but I actually think it's a very beautiful note. It's basically, it ends with telling you whether you're allowed to keep paper clips, from your supply closet, right? I mean, and that's the stuff that we all need work on, is that type of care in the tiny little issues. All right. Okay. We had